officials. It is today, Tuesday, the 24th of August, 9 o'clock. And I'm Andrikus van der Westhuizen, Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning. I wish to extend a warm welcome to you one and all for joining us this morning. And as you will see, honourable members, we've had to change the agenda of this meeting at a very short notice, and I will expand on that just now. Just as part of our welcoming, can I just ask that all the members that are online introduce themselves? Thank you.
My name is Fatima and I'm a member for the Standing Committee.
Good morning, Chair. Member Brinkhuis. Thank you.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everyone. Pat Moran, member of this committee.
Good morning, Chair. It's Derek America, standing in for Honourable Bartman. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, honourable members, and hearty welcome also to you, Honourable Brinkhuis. It is great to also see you in this meeting. I think it may be a first. And we really appreciate your interest in the work of this committee as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Then, while we're doing the welcoming, we've also received an apology from Dr. Ivan Meyer, the Minister of Agriculture. And then we also have a number of officials from the Department of Agriculture online. And I wish to hand over to Dr. Sebo Petsa, the head of the department, to also introduce his team. Doctor, most welcome. Thank you for accommodating us at very short notice, and over to you.
Chairperson, thank you very much. Good morning to you and to the members. We always are happy to come to the committee because we believe it's our job to account to you, to help you understand what is happening out there in terms of our work. So I'm joined this morning by the DDG, Mr. Darrell Jacobs, and also Dr. Tlamalani Ngwenya. Dr. Tlamalani Ngwenya is our new appointment. She's responsible for agriculture, producer support and development, formerly known as
Sorry, is it only on my side, Dr. Sebo Petsa? Your voice suddenly disappeared. It may be on my side, but if you could...
No, it cannot be, because it's also happening on my side. So it cannot be on your side, Chair.
Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, you're back on. Thank you. Sorry, you were just busy introducing Ms. Ngwenya.
Yes, please. Dr. Ngwenya is responsible for agricultural producer support and development. There she is. And Mr. Jerry Aris, that's the team from the department. And we look forward to sharing the information with you and the members, Chairperson. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And then obviously I also wish to welcome the officials from the WCPP who make this meeting possible, and without whose hard work we would not be able to meet this morning. And particularly I wish to thank Ms. Nikat, who on one of her very few paid holidays jumped in and helped us. Honourable members, we were scheduled this morning to meet on the input on the Western Cape Biodiversity Bill, but we firstly received a request from our National Department of Environmental Affairs for some extra time for them to comment on the bill. And then we also received a number of input comments from the public, other entities, after the due date. And it was deemed to be prudent to accommodate those requests because we want the best end result. You know, a due date is an administrative issue, and while it cannot be taken lightly, in this case, I think that we would like to consider all the input, and therefore a request from the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning for some extra time from our side was granted. Secondly, quite a number of members of this committee has in the past inquired regarding our emerging farmers, how many of them are being supported, what is the nature of the support, how successful is the support that they're receiving, etc. And I then deemed it in the best interest of the work of this committee not to just cancel this morning's meeting due to the fact that our original agenda could not be adhered to, but then to rather change the agenda and include this very important topic to us, and that is the one of changing the landscape of farming from, if I may say so, being a predominantly previously Afrikaner-dominated entity or industry to one that is open and welcoming and helping all South Africans that wish to and that have got a love for agriculture to be part of such an industry. And we know that there are many people that absolutely love farming and that love the animals, love to see stuff grow and so on. And while it's hard work and not always that profitable, many people out of their love for it choose to absolutely pursue this. So, honourable members, I trust that this carries with your approval, and therefore I want to say a special thank you to the Department of Agriculture for accommodating the committee's request to brief it today at short notice. I believe that then your computer system also played up, and that the presentation that you're going to do just now, Dr. Sebupetsa, unfortunately reached the members less than half an hour ago. But notwithstanding, I think we are all looking forward and we are anxious to learn more of your work in this regard. I also wish to extend a special welcome to Ms. Ngwenya. Thank you very much for joining us here in the Western Cape. It's just wonderful to have you, and we're looking forward to your work as well. We're quite proud of our Department of Agriculture in the Western Cape, and there's no doubt in my mind that you would be able to assist us in taking particularly your directorate further. As I've said, it's a big challenge, as farming is not all that profitable in many cases. So many people have fallen by the wayside, and we certainly cannot allow that to happen. Food security and all those other factors are just too important to us. And with that, I want to give back to you, Dr. Sebupetsa, and I presume one of your officials will be doing the presentation.
Yes, you're correct, Chair. Thank you very much. Mr. Jacobs will lead the presentation from our side. Over to you, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you very much, HOD, and good morning, Chairperson, members, and everybody present on this forum. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and apologies that our file server was down last night, and so we could not get the presentation through. But we'll try to go through it. That would be presented between Mr. Jerry Aris and myself. So we'll try to go through it slowly, but ensure that we share as much information as possible. And we agree with Dr. Sebupetsa. We always welcome the opportunities to engage the Standing Committee. Now, the request was for a presentation on Emerging Farmer Development Program, and I think it's important just at the outset to indicate that we don't really use the term emerging farmer we focus on largely the three categories, namely subsistence farmers who have a turnover normally of less than 50,000 per annum, or smallholder farmers, which is below 1 million per annum, and that's largely our focus. But obviously, the service that agriculture renders is across the board in terms of conditional grants, and we'll share that information that is directed towards black farmers in the main. And so we will be sharing some of that information with you, Chairperson. I'd like us just to move to the next slide. Thank you very much. And this is just a very broad outline. We're going to give you a bit of an overview, then we'll touch on the commodity approach, and made reference to COSP and ILIMA, which is the conditional grants, and Jerry Aris will be taking us through that. Then I'll focus a bit on some of the disasters which face our smallholder farmers and subsistence farmers, and it's really disasters which confront all of us, so all of the agricultural sector. I will touch a bit on the drought support we provide. We look at how we are driving infrastructure. Just have one slide on market access, 1 or 2 slides, and then a few concluding remarks. So that's the broad outline, Chair. And if we can go to the next slide. I think we always started with this slide because I think it's important to emphasize that the footprint of the Department of Agriculture is across the length and breadth of this province. We are very well represented in terms of our regional offices or district offices, as they're called, and we therefore are fairly comfortable that we are able to reach deep into the most rural parts of this province, the urban parts of this province, and just ensure that no smallholder farmer, no subsistence farmer or is outside of the reach of our extension officers, but not just our extension officers, all of our staff, whether it be on the research side, whether it be in terms of our vets. The reach is across the length and breadth of this province. The next slide, please. I think while the next slide comes up, and it seems to be frozen, Samantha. Oh, there we go. Agriculture in the Western Cape, very different to the rest of South Africa, where we see horticulture as the main agriculture activity, but a decent spread. Horticulture, 47%, livestock, 37%, field crops, 16%. I think there's also significant variation that is observed at the district level, and we thought we'll just share some of this information because it's really about the broad overview and the broad perspective of agriculture. If we can go to the next slide, where we just begin to look at the share of Western Cape exports to national agriculture exports, and you can see the greenish graph right at the top, which is the Western Cape percentage contribution to South Africa's agricultural exports. And at the moment, it's just below the 50% mark, but it's still a significant contributor to national agricultural exports. And it's something that, as the Department of Agriculture, we embrace the responsibility to ensure that we're able to provide the best possible support to our agricultural sector, to our farmers across the length and breadth of this province. Can we move to the next slide? The next slide just speaks a little bit about agricultural employment, and again to show that the Western Cape, yes, it's big on agriculture, but it's also big on employment within agriculture. Shows an increase of between 2020 and 2021, increase of 5% in agri-processing jobs. And I want to emphasize what a significant factor this is. We've seen in most other sectors of the economy of this country, significant shedding of jobs because of COVID. Yet within agri-processing in particular, we've seen a 5% increase in agri-processing jobs. There is a concern that primary agriculture declined significantly, but I think the immediate impact of COVID-19 has been very significant. But I think over time we're going to begin to monitor that particular trend, because I do think that it's something that will definitely be reversed as agriculture stabilizes even more. And we know it's been an essential service. So I think that there's a lot of additional responsibility that we certainly carry as the department in making sure that our subsistence and smallholder farmers get the best support possible in the interest also of stabilizing employment and ensuring the growth of employment within the Western Cape. We can move to the next slide, and that covers the commodity approach. And I want to hand over to Jerry Aris to take us through this part of the presentation. Mr. Aris.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs, and good morning, Honourable Chair and the other honourable members of the committee. I was asked to do this part, and I will do so. I know that the Honourable Chairperson van der Westhuizen will help me where I lack some good English in this presentation. That's just on a lighter note. Members, just to say, I must just quickly say something about the commodity approach. Now, just to say where it was coming from, I think it was in 28 and 29, where there was drive from the national department that provinces must engage commodities in support of the land reform farms. At that stage, there was a very poor performance in terms of land reform projects of businesses across the country. And our national department felt that the commodities can add value and they can support us with this initiative to get land reform more successful. Now, at that stage, I must say, there was figures showing going around in terms of successful land reform. That was not good across the country. And we as a province decided then in 2009, after our engagement with the national department, that we will definitely follow the commodity approach. So since 2009, we are engaging our commodities in the province to support us not only with land reform, but with all smallholder farmers and commercial black farmer projects in the province. I will say something more about it just within the next 2 or 3 slides. But what is the strategy? The strategy is that it's an institutional arrangement that draws in multiple spheres of government and the private sector, each understanding their unique roles, working from the same plan towards achieving the same outcomes. So it's not we are taking over one another's mandate or work, but we're supporting one another to get a better result for our farmers. Next slide. Chair, that is just an indication of some of the commodities that we are working with, and we have formal agreements with them that we are signing on a yearly basis that they will support us. That one is the Red Meat Producers Organization. It's Hotgrove from the fruit industry side. SAPU, it's the South African Pork Producers Association. Potato SA, we've got the SA Poultry Association. We've got the South African Table Grape Institute. We've got Vinpro from the wine. Casidra, our implementing partner. We've got what is not on there is Grain SA, the aquaculture industry, the ostrich industry, and the dairy industry that we are having good formal working relations with. Next slide. Chair, that one is just to give, it's looking a little bit busy, but just to say, as we speak, on a yearly basis, we are taking in applications from our smallholder or black commercial farmers, where they apply then for our grant funding. That I will say later a little bit more. Chair, then there's different committees. If you look on the right-hand side of that slide, you will see there's fruit, dairy, grain, wool and sheep, red meat. That is just some of the committees that's looking at applications coming in from the farmers. And as we speak, we are busy with that process. We've advertised earlier in the year. The deadline for application was now the 16th of August. We are working towards the closing date for our business plan, the provincial business plan that we must submit to National on the 30th of September. So all applications are now in the system, and those committees are now looking at the applications, and they will go out and do some site visits on new applicants to see what is happening there and what exactly is it that we must prioritize in terms of those applications. What is important, Chair, is to say those committees, the chairpersons of those committees is actually coming from the industry partners. For example, the fruit CPAC, we call it CPAC, Commodity Project Allocation Committees. They are being chaired by the hot grow people. The dairy will be chaired by the MPO guys. Grain from Grain SA. So actually, Chair, we as government officials, we don't influence that process in terms of who must get what. That's being done by the industry, although we are there to see that they are playing according to the rules and according to the framework of the grants, and that they don't step outside those boundaries. Chair, that's an important structure. It's working since 2009 for us. Other provinces are still dreaming about it, but we are not going to make their problem our problem. For now, it's the industry would like to support us, and where we can, we will support the industry in this province, and they will check for viability and sustainability of projects. Next slide. Chair, that is just a list of the commodities again. That's there, but to also say here on the side, you will see there's a unit for technical assistance. Chair, it's normally when we are receiving an application and we don't have that expertise in-house, we can use that that platform of Utah where we can in-source expertise, like for example, if we need an expert on mushroom farming, we don't get a lot of requests for that, but then we can get somebody to assist and evaluate a specific application or to advise the business as such. Next slide. Chair, partnerships is very important for us. This is just an example of a partnership where we partnered with the fruit industry through the Jobs Fund. And actually, Chair, there was the industry was bringing some funding towards the table, and they were looking for match funding that we were giving them. You will see they brought 20 million on the far right-hand side of that table, and we've supported them with, 20 million. We supported them with 40 million. With that 60 million, we could access another 60 million from the Jobs Fund. That is just direct funding. And we could start a project some 4 or 5 years ago. It was a 4-year project where we've expanded planting of fruit trees on land reform farms. And with that 60 million, we could access another 60 million from the Jobs Fund. And initially, eventually, we had 120 million to work with over 4 years. That project came to an end now with obviously a huge impact on our projects. That is just to give you. It's fine. You can go to the next slide. That is just to say, in our province, there were 20 projects in the Western Cape and 4 in the other provinces. I think 3 or 4 in the Eastern Cape, and they were all supported with that fund. Eventually, Chair, indirectly, we could use that 120 million, and it became 200 million with all the in-kind support through those 4 years. Next slide. It's just to say, Chair, I forgot just to say there was a total number of 414 jobs created through that, permanent jobs, through that jobs fund partnership arrangement. Chair, this brings me closer to what we are dealing with. I've alluded to it earlier, is to say normally we are receiving CASP funding, CASP and ILIMA funding from national on a yearly basis. Chair, there you can see the amount of funding in terms of CASP, and that is the amount that we normally divide between the 10 commodities. You will see fruit got 13 million, citrus got 2 million, grain got 7.7, and so forth. Chair, it's also based on the number of farms in that particular industry that we are supporting, but also in terms of the number of jobs that we can create through this investment from the taxpayer actually that we are using. So there's some other funding as well. You will see the college will get some funding. There's a training fund coming with CASP that we train people. The ERP is referring to support where we could appoint a number of extension officials, and we are paying their salaries and goods and services and maintenance of the fleet, the cars that are driving from that particular fund, Chair. So, but in essence, we are dividing the amount of money between the number of applications in the farms in that particular industry. Next slide. Chair, the next one, although it's exactly a grant funding, but we are funding our household garden programs and community and school projects from this particular grant, Lima Letsima. You will see Fetchaklala. That is where the bulk of the money is coming from, that will go into those food security initiatives. And then they allow us to put some other commodities under this particular grant as well, but that is actually prescribed by our national department, which commodities we can fund under which particular grant. Next slide. Chair, that was for the previous one was for 2021. This is for 21-22. That is actually the year that we are in now as we speak, Chair. We have received our money a little bit late, not in the first quarter. I think it was in July. We have received our funding late July or early August. I'm just a little bit not sure about the date now. I think it's the 4th of August. Nevertheless, Chair, we are busy now with the implementation of these projects, and per commodity as it is there is the first tranche. We will get another 3 tranches later in the year. Per quarter, they will transfer it to us, and then we will start with the implementation of those particular projects. There's just something about the graduates that you see there, Chair. There's a national project where we must appoint 120 graduates that don't have a job at this stage on farms where they can get experience, and hopefully they can then start their own business at a stage, or they can start working within the industry. So that graduates is not related to the college, but it's a different program that we are dealing with. Chair, so that is just the CASP allocation. As I said, for this year, we've got our first tranche and we are busy with the implementation. Next slide. The next one is the Lima again, Chair. You will see Fetchaklala, again, our food security projects, and you will see more or less exactly the same commodities funded under this particular grant. And we've also received the first tranche of this particular grant for this financial year as we speak. Next one. Chair, there was a request some time ago from the previous president that we must commercialize black farmers in the industry. And each and every province got a target of 50. They must select or elect 50 farmers. Obviously, with some criteria, they are all not commercialized yet, as it is a process. We've selected 50 farmers and we are supporting them now, I think, for the past 5 years plus. Chair, this one is, they are all at different levels. Some of them we are still funding. Some 16 from the 50 we are funding at this stage. The others we are giving training and extension and advisory services. That is important. But I think what is important to this one is that last two bullets, Chair, is that we are trying to get most of them that are there to export or to sell, to get them as a GAP accredited or certified. That is important, and there we're working with the PPCB and the National Marketing Council. With their support, we are focusing on them. And the other key thing that we are focusing on, Chair, is the last bullet, is where they form part of the financial record keeping system and the production record keeping system of the department. That's a program run by our agricultural economist in the department, and that is critical. There's always on a straight line not enough or sufficient records, and we are trying to build that with them, and that they also comply to our SARS department, and that their books are in order, and we are supporting them with that. I think that is key for that particular 50 farmers. Next slide. Chair, obviously, this one, we know exactly where these farmers are as we are mapping them with GPS coordinates, and we know exactly which industries they are in. And yes, that is just to say that is for the 2020 CARS projects. Next one is the Lima projects, Chair, also for last year. The money that we got from National, we know exactly where it went into. And those, there are the projects. It's been mapped on our AIMS system. So the information is available. Next slide. Chair, this one is in terms of our support to our smallholder farmers and black farmer. My apologies, Chair. I've indicated earlier that we are working in partnership with the commodities, and that is not only to strengthen the land reform projects, Chair, but it's also to strengthen our capacity as extension service in the province. Chair, you will see there the number of commercial and smallholder farmers in the province. Commercial farmers, there's a database of them, 6,900, and then we've done a smallholder survey with National a year ago, where we've got a database of those smallholder farmers, and there's 9,800 of them. But then, Chair, there's also the subsistence farmers. Last year around Easter and late this year or early this year around January, the National Department was running two projects across provinces. The one was COVID-19 support, and the other one was PESI. Now, PESI is the Presidential Economic Stimulus Initiative. It was a national program. With that one, Chair, the critical criteria was people who are in agriculture, whether at home or at school or wherever they were, or at health departments, and they've got access to land. But if their turnover was below 20,000 rand, they could apply for that support. The COVID-19 support was just from, if your turnover per annum was 20,000 and above till 1 million rand, you could apply. Chair, and that was the only criteria. So people, whether legal or illegal on land, wherever they were in the province, they could apply. And another 7,400 was coming out of that exercise, leaving then us with in total number of farmers within the province, with what we have on our databases is 24,183. Next one. Chair, and that brings us to the challenge in the province, and that is the extension officer to farmer ratio, which is at this stage with those figures, it's 1 to 390, and that is quite high. Instead, it's very high. Chair, there was a study done also, I think, in 2009, and based on those figures, those years, it said that we must have about 119 extension officers to service the number of farmers in the province. As we speak, Chair, I think we are sitting on 62, the two not appointed too late. So we are sitting with 50% of our extension staff to support these farmers. And that's why that ratio is so high. What is our saving grace at this stage, Chair, is the commodities that's coming to the table and support us with this, with the smallholders and the commercial farmers. The subsistence farmers, obviously, your faith-based organizations and your NGOs, they are coming to the party, and other departments, and they are supporting us there. So with those support, Chair, that is where we are now. We are doing what we can, but without their support, I assume we would have not been so, if I can say it, use the word successful. Yes, without their support. Next one. Chair, I'm going to hand over, if I can delegate upwards to the DDG, Daryl.
Thank you very much. And your English held out just perfectly, Jerry. You can regroup again for when you come on later. So, Chair, and members, these next few slides actually deal with some of the real issues that our farmers have to deal with. And I think the first place to start always is the extent of incidences or disasters that confront our sector. And you can see in the last 2 years, 2020, there were 4 disasters, but certainly over the last, since 2011, there's been at least 1 disaster impacting our sector every single year. And this year, we've already had 3, 6, 8 disasters confronting our sector. And I think it's the reality of the time we're in, and climate change. And if we can go to the next slide, there's a number of biosecurity issues exacerbated by climate change. We've seen crop losses in African countries due to insect pests, which has decimated or about 49% of total crop yield. You know, the reality is the changing climate is expected to also increase the damage done by insects. You can go to the next slide. We've seen animal and plant diseases, pest and foodborne diseases, which have threatened agricultural production, farmer profitability, market access, and ultimately consumer confidence. There's been a number of diseases and pests of importance. There's the citrus greening disease, citrus black spot. We've had Tuta absoluta, fruit fly, fall armyworm, locust, avian influenza, African swine fever, to name but a few. There's 2 options. 1, contain, B, eradicate. And I think there's a number of national policies and strategies and international agreements which effectively guide us. But a lot of these issues remain part of the national competence and mandate, especially in terms of biosecurity. We know there are limited resources on provincial level, both financial and human resources. There's limited resources for surveillance and sampling. Farmers cannot afford the cost to eradicate in all cases. You can move on. We thought we'll also just focus on some of the common livestock diseases, and I was initially going to also show some photographs, Chair, but I decided the photos are too gruesome for this time of the morning. But there's anthrax, black water, foot and mouth disease, blue tongue, brucellosis, tetanus, listeriosis, which we've seen very prominent over the last few years. There's Jones disease, mastitis, foot rot, bovine, rhinotracitis, milk fever, lumpy skin disease. You can move on. And all of these kinds of diseases directly impacts on livestock productivity by reducing calving rates, increasing calf mortality, and resulting in decreased milk production where appropriate. It impacts on livestock risk management because you now have decreased animal numbers with grazing changes. It impacts on agriculture and other products where you have decreases as a result of drought efficiency. There are effects on natural resource use with changes in migration and settlement patterns, and changes in biodiversity, and ultimately impacts on human welfare, where you have loss of income and assets of farm workers and farmers and families. And then finally, and very critically, zoonotic diseases can spill over, resulting in human deaths. And we've seen that with rabies, Rift Valley fever, as well as Congo fever. You can move to the next slide. So there are very specific constraints experienced by smallholder farmers. We've seen in terms of those in the export market, and there are some who are exporting. So there's delays at the harbors, there's theft of crops, there's poor gravel roads, accessing farms and facilitating market access, absence of blended finance scheme, access to loan finance, severe droughts and floods, scale of economy, market readiness and limited market access, compliance with biosecurity measures, and energy challenges. These are very real. The next slide, just click on. So what you've heard to date is why our commodity approach is so important. It's about partnerships with industry that seeks to respond to these many challenges which face our smallholder farmers in particular, and ultimately impacts the agricultural sector. Let's move to the next slide. There are also challenges with regards to land access. There's poor land governance, which is a constraint for farmers who have commercial aspirations. We've seen inexperienced farmers getting access to land. The promised support is often withdrawn on short notice. There is limited budget for acquisition of highly productive land, and we've seen that in terms of the land reform allocations from the National Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. Extremely limited budgets. It's no budget alignment between departments, as the process tends to be very time consuming. And there are challenges with regards to water allocations and legal water rights. The next slide. But even with all of that, and we've seen the COVID-19 impacting on our smallholder farmers, and what was essential was really about how do we respond to our farmers. We've seen in terms of the impact, the short-term shortage of goods on domestic markets, and there were particular actions that were required. So part of the actions required was to monitor availability of food in rural areas, and especially within remote communities where there was a long-term shortage of goods on domestic markets, again, to monitor impact, the imports of farming inputs, as well as food price inflation of imported products, where there was food insecurity within vulnerable communities. Was about providing direct and indirect assistance to the most vulnerable households, and also to develop a food voucher and coupon system. Where there was a wasting of fresh produce, we monitoring in partnership with other departments the status of fresh produce and putting mechanisms in place to acquire surplus food. Where there was a loss of market share abroad, was about monitoring export status, especially with regards to the wine industry, and to support relevant initiatives. There was a shortage of farming inputs. We monitored the availability, again, of imported farming inputs, and as well as the domestic input supply chains, industries, importers, and where there were failing farms, we monitored the financial and technical health of these farms. And Jerry has already referred to the Unit for Technical Assistance that we were able to pull in at short notice, and in terms of providing very practical action and support. We can move to the next slide. Yeah, so I think what we've seen, food production, and we are thankful for the fact that it was classified an essential service, and so we were able to continue with our services. There was immediate response in terms of advice and guidance. A number of food gardens were established. The household food gardens, we increased the target of 800, and we achieved 5,600. With regards to community food gardens, it went up from 62 to 132, and in schools from 14 to 43. We were able, through our employment creation, to create 3,420 person days through our ecological infrastructure program, and continued with our 120 graduate interns. There was also a short-term response which supported the agricultural sector, and I think we've shared this in the past, wine tourism worker stipend, where we were able to support 1,333 workers. There was farm and brand owner support of 13.5 million, and we were able to establish 80 plots of lucerne at Ibn Isa, and in the process creating 80 jobs. And this was in direct support to smallholder farmers within the Ibn Isa community. Next slide. And Mr. Aris already spoke to the kind of support that we had been able to work in partnership with National on, in terms of the 1,555 farmers that we were able to support. Overall value there was 58 million, and in terms of PESI, a further 1,521, and a total cost of 4.4 million rand. And so we're actually very pleased that between the provincial office of the national department and our department, we were able to work in partnership to strengthen smallholder and subsistence farmer support to the extent as it's indicated here, Chair. Thank you. We can move to the next slide. The next few slides deal with particular elements of certain disasters. So you have, in terms of the drought, where we've introduced fodder vouchers, and it's really about assisting farming communities who have been severely affected by the devastating drought, to assist in the conservation of natural agricultural resources, promote implementation of disaster risk reduction measures, promote skills development for local communities, assist in retaining jobs for agri workers, and to ultimately, it's around reviving the agricultural sector, even in the midst of a devastating drought. The next slide. And so we thought it useful just to give an indication of how much has actually been expended to date, both from the Department of Agriculture side as well as the National Department, working in partnership with the National Disaster Management Center. And you can see the department over the last few years, 5 years, has contributed 181 million in terms of supporting our farmers through this crisis, and National have come on board and provided 277.8 million rand. And so it's made a significant contribution to trying to stabilize the agricultural sector, even within the midst of the drought. The next slide. And the next few slides really just shows spatially where the most critical areas are and the drought support. And so what looks like little triangles are the towns or areas which received drought support. In 2018, when the drought was at its worst, And that support was provided on a monthly basis. The next slide shows how the veld conditions had improved in 2019, but there were still areas up on the west coast, within the central Karoo, and other areas that had where the indication was of critical areas and the towns and areas which received drought support on a monthly basis. And so the veld assessment actually guides which areas are still in need of drought support. And as you can see, in terms of 2020, a lot more areas were marked as green. There were still parts of the west coast, parts of the Karoo that had still been flagged for red, and those were the areas that had received drought support. 2021, very similar picture to 2020, certain parts of the west coast and the central Karoo and parts of Garden Route that was still classified as disaster and justifying our support. We can go on to the next slide. As a response to all of that, we introduced stock watering systems, which allows for grazing throughout the landscape, prevents land degradation and overgrazing, and where farmers are able to adapt to the impact of climate change through, for example, drought. So we thought that we just give you that kind of overview in terms of a very practical demonstration of how we support our agricultural sector and specifically our smallholder farmers in the midst of one of the worst droughts in our history. And I want to hand back to Mr. Aris so he can stretch his English just a little bit more. Jerry, back to you for the next few slides.
Thank you, DDG. Honorable Chair, yes, I'm only going to handle a few slides. Chair, this one is about extension and advisory services. We say it's an active service. Now, Chair, we are sitting with an approved list of projects every year, and our arrangement with our extension officers are that they must visit those approved projects at least once a month. Now, a farmer can WhatsApp you, and he can SMS, and he can email you, and he can do a lot of things, and he can get you in town as well. That's all good and well, but once a month we want to visit his or her farm and to see for ourselves what is happening there, and we will then advise the farmer on site, as we say. Now, Chair, what you see there is we are using an electronic system, what we call the smart pen, and that pen is recording our conversation on farm with the farmer, and obviously what the extension officer is writing down. But what is important is that by doing so, we are building a history on the farm, and we are making it clear what are we going to do then for the next month, what is our responsibility as an official, and what is the farmer's responsibility in terms of the business owner. Chair, so each and every dot there is a farm visit, and that is the visits for the fourth quarter, meaning it was between 1st of January and the end of March this year. And we've done around 800 farm visits, and they are all recorded on the system. Chair, what is nice about the system is after that thing is being recorded with a pen and the cell phone, we can actually throw away the piece of paper because it's within 10 seconds, it's on our database, what we call AIMS. Chair, but I will not be honest with you to mention it here. I think you've heard it several times, but our operational funding for extension and advisory services, 70% plus, is actually coming from the grant funding from National, what we call the ERP funding, Extension Revitalization Program from National. Now, last year, Chair, we've got 22 million. This year, we've got 16.6 million, if I'm now correct. Chair, the implication is that last year we could do with our 60 extension officers 4,500 on-farm site visits. But due to the cut in funding, this year we can only do 3,600. So, Chair, there is a risk if they're going to further cut that funding, we will have to make plans in the province. I'm just saying that, but we are going down in terms of our number of site visits due to the budget cuts from National. Next slide. Chair, that one is just to show an interaction with a farmer where we are recording those particular conversation. And then we'll get to a green point on the previous slide. That's where it's coming from. So just for Honorable Maran, I know he's not sure, but the farmer is the one on the left-hand side, Honorable Maran. And the other one is the extension officer. Chair, that was the previous photo was, or picture was early in the fourth quarter. That was pre-planting. And the one that you see now is the post one after the farmer has planted. That is AG4 boerdery in Badarsdorp. Everything is looking excellent, Chair. The person on the right-hand side, the lady, she's from Grain SA. Even if you can record, I was talking about our partnership with the commodities, and she's from Grain SA. And normally when we visit the farm, we are trying to take the commodity partner with, or vice versa, when we are doing that. So that was just to show everything. It seems that we're going to have a bumper crop. We can only cross our fingers for the farmer's sake, and that they have a bumper crop like last year. Again, next slide. Chair, that is just a typical picture of last year during harvesting time in the Overberg. And as I alluded to it earlier, we can just hope that our sector, the grain sector, will look the same going forward now from late October, November, that they will also again have a bumper crop. Chair, that is my input, and now I don't have any English left anymore. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aris. That's the last few slides, Chair, I'm pleased to say, because I'm sure you must be tired listening to our voices. We thought because water underpins the agricultural sector, and especially smallholder farmer development, we thought we'll just flag some of the what we call the AAMP, Agriculture Agri-Processing Master Plan infrastructure, and just to share some of what is currently envisaged or what we've already done. And so, yeah, in terms of some of the major projects in the Western Cape, you can see in the middle, we're targeting Brandvlei Dam, Buffelsjags Dam, Glenwilliam Dam, and the Little Karoo irrigation canals and development. Because unless we sort out the infrastructure and expand or increase the capacity of dams or canals to allow for retention of water, we will not be able to grow the sector successfully. And so that's really at the heart of it. And some of it, you would know, Chair, involves Department of Water and Sanitation, and they have been central in making sure that well, I can't say that we move ahead because there have been several delays with the National Department, but I think we've been able to develop a fairly strong partnership with them, and I think things are starting to move ahead, albeit slowly at times. If we can go to the next page, we have highlighted in the past the value of Brandvlei. Just keep clicking, Sam, till you get to the bottom. There we go. Okay, and we remain optimistic that Brandvlei will be able to achieve its full potential. We recognize that if it is rolled out as we envisage that it will be rolled out, that there's the potential of 6,600 jobs in the next 10 years, with a gross farm income of just under 700 million rand. And I think those are significant points, and we therefore keep remaining part of the engagement with National, with both Dallard, with Department of Water and Sanitation, as well as with the Department of Trade and Industry, because we do recognize and we the significance of the Brandvlei as in terms of its agricultural development potential. We can go to the next slide. We are also working very closely with the Lower Olifants River Water Users Association with its annual maintenance work to maintain a 100-year-old concrete canal, which is 268 kilometers, and which is the sole bulk water supply conduit within the Matsikama region, and supplies about 850 farms with 14,000 hectares of irrigation. And so we have a very strong partnership with them, because we believe that it's critical that we work together to ensure the continued maintenance of that area. We're also involved in refurbishing and upgrading of irrigation canals in Oudtshoorn, Calitzdorp, Ladysmith, Montague and Heidelberg, and involves the lining of canals, the piping, repairing of leaking water canals, thus saving water, and enabling farmers to use water more efficiently, which facilitates growth in the local economy, creating employment and increasing production levels. And the next few slides is really just to show, as a result of some of our interventions, if you can just go on, Sam, the canals which are flowing with water, and you can go to the next slide. If you look at the next one, yeah, I think we may have, yeah. So I mean, if you just go one back, because I want to just park there. We just flitted through some of the slides showing some of the workers helping to maintain the canals. The Lure Canal, in October 7th, 2017, you'll see the picture on the left is how it looked before there was an intervention by our team in partnership with the Water Users Association. And February 2019, you had a beautiful, clear flow of water with no more sand in the canal. The next slide, again, February 2017, some of the groins before construction, after construction, beautiful flows of water. And that was a 3.4 million investment. We can just go to the next slide, which is market access. We've just got 2 more content slides to go. So we thought we'll just indicate very quickly that there's a market access focus around smallholder and subsistence farmers, and one area is in terms of compliance support. We know that there have been a number of private standards which have been part of requirements set by various retailers and importers. We've seen food safety with SA GAP and Global GAP. There's been social and environmental compliance, which smallholder farmers needed to meet. And within CESA, there are 16 of these areas, and WITA 14. We've undertaken capacity building in terms of training and other technical support. There's a number of marketing tools, but fundamentally our support is to facilitate access to markets, and we do that. Jerry's already spoken about financial record keeping and production record keeping. Those underpin the ability of our farmers to access the various markets out there and to stabilize and ensure that they have enough information and are able to monitor and track their performance. So, Chairperson, just some concluding remarks from our side, at least from my side, before I hand back to the head of department. Our strength lies in partnerships. We are, that for us is the key. We have these with the private sector. Disasters remain a challenge for smallholder and subsistence farmers, as reflected in the incident chart. Climate change, we know, is a reality. There is a misalignment between land delivery and agricultural support. I've showed some of those challenges. There's often poor land governance, but we've also seen our agricultural sector is resilient. Boer maak 'n plan, that's what we often have heard in the past. We've seen farmers making plans to produce in the midst of not only drought, but more recently COVID-19. And as the incident sheet showed, that we are dealing at the moment, we have dealt already in this year with 8 disasters. And so, Chair, with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity, and back to Dr. Sebopetsa, and again, we would welcome any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Sebopetsa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thanks to my team. I think that's a good presentation. We are happy to engage on the questions that the committee may have. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Thank you, Doctor, and thank you to the presenters. Honourable members, over to you, and I already recognize a number of hands. There's the Honourable Marais, then Honourable America. Please go ahead, and please, if we can keep it to questions for now. I also see the hand of Honourable Maran and then Honourable Botja, and Kamba Botja after that. So Marais, America, Maran, and Botja. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. My question basically is this: how do you identify would-be farmers? How do you get to see who are the people to whom you should allocate farms or train or make part of your program? That's one. Number two, you use the all umbrella word black. I'm not interested to use in the word as if everybody is black, because I'm a Greek or I'm a colored. How do you differentiate between how many of the people in the Western Cape is of the colored group who get farms, and how many are hidden under a name black, but they never get empowered? Thank you.
Thank you for being to the point and brief and setting a good example. Over to you, Honourable America.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm not going to be as brief, but thank you to the department for the presentation. As an occasional visitor to a committee, I'm often amazed to see the good work that they've done, and it is certainly inspiring. So coming to the question, Chair, I've got 3 questions. One being is that on a particular slide, it was stated that 50 farmers had been identified to be sort of promoted or assisted to become commercial farmers. So my question is, in terms of achieving that particular objective, to become that sort of commercial farmer in the end, one needs to have security of tenure. What is the status of if those, if the department is working towards achieving that objective? Is there a degree of security of the tenureship of those particular farmers? On the one hand. Secondly, Chair, the department also identified in terms of a particular program whereby they would assist graduate on a slide in support of smallholder and subsistence farmers. They have identified 10,440,000 rand for graduates. So the question around that is the uptake of that particular program, firstly, and secondly, would graduates be defined as those who graduate at the Elsenburg College or at our traditional universities? And thirdly, whether that particular internship program or whatever one could call it is only restricted to applicants from within the Western Cape, or are we open to accept applications from outside of the Western Cape as well? And then the third question, Chair, revolves around cash flow management of smallholder and subsistence farmers. And we know that cash flow is a challenge not only for smallholder or subsistence farmers, but also for established farmers. But it is more of a challenge, I would imagine, for smallholder subsistence farmers. What support is being provided to these smallholder farmers in order for them to effectively and efficiently manage their cash flow? And then lastly, Chair, in terms of statutory requirements of any business, and particularly in the farming sector, and we know that there's a number of legislative statutory requirements that need to be complied with, namely COIDA, UIF, and related legislation. And often the skills doesn't exist within the sector to effectively deal with those compliance issues. What is there support for smallholder farmers to become compliant in terms of those statutory requirements? And then finally, Chair, I'd like to use the word lastly and finally, is there information available, statistics available around the impact of the national minimum wage on smallholder farmers, and because there will be a link between implementation and compliance with that statutory requirement and also cash flow of those smallholder farmers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable America, and I think you've put your finger on a very sensitive point, because I see one of the initiatives is to try and get some farmers to adhere to the legal prescripts of minimum wages. So I'm also looking forward to hearing more about the impact of all the legislation, particularly also the minimum wages, etc. The next one on the list is Honourable Maran.
Chairperson, thank you. Chair, I also got a couple of issues, of points. But first, let me also welcome the presentation, very comprehensive presentation. And I fully understand, Chair, that we cannot interrogate the whole presentation now in front of us, because I remember on the 3rd of August, I think, we have basically asked for a presentation around the issue of the 50 emerging farmers or smallholder farmers, Chair. But it's important, Chair, just to raise the issue and maybe for a later discussion, because one would like to interrogate some of the issues, because we have heard now about the inexperienced individuals that have received land, and we would like to understand how many are them. We have heard about COVID support, basically from 20K to 1 million rand, and even some of those on illegal land. We would like to interrogate that particular issue, Chair. But Chair, I've heard 16 out of the 50. I'm not sure whether I've heard correctly. Have basically completed that particular program. What does it entail? Does it mean that they can now stand on their own? They will not get financial support anymore, whether it's CASP or Ilima Letsema. And then the other 34, Chair, whether those 34 are still within that program, whether some will fall out, and if so, what are those particular reasons? We just thought maybe, Chair, that the department will go a bit deeper into that particular issue, because that is what we have asked them initially, to just come and report on those 50 farmers and how far they are in terms of that particular program. Also, Chair, we'd like to understand who they are, the names specifically, the 16 that have completed, if I have heard correctly, and who are those who, the remaining. We would like to understand who are they, the names, Chair, and maybe at some states, but in the resolving part, visit some of those farms, Chair. And then lastly, Chair, remember in 2019 when the Premier spoken about the projects, agricultural projects within the Western Cape, and how successful they are. The Premier draw a comparison between national projects within this province, where national government are involved in, and then those where the province is involved, and then the success rate between the two. Now, I remember in February we visited the farm, Kleine Iseljag, in Genadendal, Greyton area of Andre Kloete. And I remember the department was saying that particular farm is one of the models, like a Roy's Royal farm. And when you heard they speak claims as if it's one of theirs, but it's a plus farm, proactive land acquisition strategy farm. So I'm not sure whether the department agree with what the Premier have said, that there is national projects where the national government is involved and they are not so successful, and then also those where the province are. And it seems that now, and it gives you the impression that whatever is successful belongs to the provincial government, and whatever fails belongs to the national government. So I just want to understand in terms of that, whether the department itself, the Premier could have said one thing, but it does not mean necessarily within the department they operate like that. But I would like the department to come out and say, no, what the Premier have said is wrong. If there is any project within this particular province, we will give attention to that farm, because it is within the boundaries of this particular province. I just want to have an understanding. But just on the 16 or on the 15th, say, maybe if they just can give more information in terms of that. If one is successful and of that particular program, but still receiving other assistance, what does that entail? Thanks.
Thank you. And then over to Honourable Nkamba Botja.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and greetings to the meeting. I've got a couple of questions. The first question that I have, Chairperson, is on the issue of the offer extension pertaining to the ratio of 1:319. So I'd like the department to share with us the reasons for such a stretch, and what has the department, or what is the department doing to correct this? Because the fact that they have such a stretch, it means then that there is going to be an impact on service delivery, where small farmers will be under-serviced. That's number one. And number two, can we possibly be supplied with a database of small-holding farmers that is said to have been benefited from the grants and the support? Can we have this information per region, Chairperson? And number three, I just want to know from the department, what outreach programs do they have in place to reach out even the small holding farmers, specifically in the rural areas? And if there is, can we possibly get the report on programs that the department has embarked on? And thirdly, can the department in this meeting tell us whether they have reached the targets, specifically on the key performance appraisals, speaking directly on the support to emerging farmers? And lastly, Chairperson, I just want to know from the department if they have a monitoring system to check on the farmers that have benefited from these grants and support, whether they are compliant or even if they are making any improvement in their operations after they've been supported by the department. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Thank you very much, Honourable. And lastly, Honourable Brinkhuis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, my question is very brief, very simple to the department. First of all, thank you for the very comprehensive presentation by the department. My question, Chair, is that if the department can indicate if they have any educational outreach programs for high school learners, especially matriculants that is preparing to possibly go to university. What kind of educational outreach programs, agricultural program do they have for these kind of high school students? Thank you very much.
Good, thank you very much. And then just 3 issues from my side. The first one is, Mr. Jacobs, you referred to some progress on the delays of the water construction projects, particularly Klein Willem Dam and the Brandvlei Feeder Canal. On what do you base your statement that you can see some progress? Has there been a site establishment at Brandvlei, or why, can you put us at ease to say that those projects are now progressing as planned? The second one is, to what extent do you find that the 30-year lease, you've said that that impacts negatively, and that is a stumbling block to farmers. What are your proposals then? How should government go about, because obviously you don't want to hand land to a new farmer and then the next moment, that person sells the land off to a big commercial farmer. Do you have a solution? Do you have an alternate proposal in this regard? And then I can just imagine, thank you for those maps with all the farm visits, but I can just imagine that visiting all those farms on a monthly basis must be extremely time consuming and also very, running up costs for transport, etc. Many of those distances are quite big. The roads are often gravel roads, and I think the transport must take a lot of beating. And those vehicles are probably not always within cell phone reception. So my question is, to what extent can you use technology to give support to farmers? I think, things like photographs sent via WhatsApp or email, etc., and try and improve the reach and the ability to influence and assist farmers via, not necessarily physical visits, but perhaps also making use of technology. And then lastly, Mr. Jacobs, you started off by saying that you're no longer using the term emerging farmers, yet I saw that term still being used within the presentation. If you could just give us a little bit more information on what is the terminology used, because when you spoke of not emerging farmers, you went over to subsistence farmers, etc. So how must we then go about if we want to refer to a farmer that is being assisted to try and level the playing field in agriculture? Thank you very much. And Dr. Sebo Setsa, are you going to direct the questions to various staff?
Yes, Chair, thank you very much to you and the members for the questions. Let me take the first bite, and I'll then direct to my colleagues. And I agree with you on your last comment, Chair, around the emerging farmers. I think that was simply a mistake. That reference on the slide, I saw it. In fact, we had our own discussion last night with the team, and I picked that up. I think it was just a simple mistake. The question around smallholder versus emerging, this was a decision communicated to provinces, I think about 8 years ago, thereabout, by the National Agriculture at the time. And the issue that was raised was actually the farmers themselves saying, you calling us emerging farmers, when are we going to come out of emerging? And a directive was then issued by the then Minister Tina Jomat Peterson, that said we shall not refer to these farmers as emerging. And I think from that time we've been referring to them as a smallholder, subsistence smallholder going into commercial. Your next question around whether we cannot consider technology, to relieve some of these pressures that you are very correct about. We do use technology where it's appropriate, but as you'd also imagine, many of these new farmers do need to be assisted quite constantly, and because these are new generation farmers in many instances, and therefore we've got to visit those. But if you juxtapose that with the visits we do, you can obviously see we do not visit all the farmers in the Western Cape because, one, we will not be able to afford that, and two, that is why we also use farmers' days, information days, where in a group system we're able to then educate these farmers. But we also encourage farmers to work together with commercial farmers through our commodity approach, what we call Know Your Neighbor campaign, because some of the technical issues that farmers have can easily be addressed by their commercial counterpart in the nearby, but also farmer formations like AFASA, because themselves are also involved in strengthening other farmers in their regions. You asked us, Chair, around the proposal on the 30-year lease, which we say it's a worrisome issue. We say it's worrying because the banks are no longer looking at the 30-year lease as good security of tenure to enable or to advance credit financing to any farmer. And we think that if that is allowed to continue, we create a challenge where these farmers are waiting for government to support them to run their businesses. And as you and the members would know, Chair, there's not enough funding in this country to support all land reform farmers. And our proposal obviously would be that when farmers are given this land, give them some flexibility, but also discourage them from selling the farm. And if they get to that stage, that farm should actually revert to the state, but allow them some mechanism that they can use it somewhat to leverage external funding to be able to do their work. Your question on Brandflay, I will leave that to the DDG to respond to. And the question that Honorable Member Brenkes raised on educational programs, I leave that also to the DDG. Honorable Member Nkampa Botia, thank you very much for your questions. I think one of your key questions is what are we doing to correct the running away farmer extension officer ratio? And I think when we started, we indicated that our commodity approach as a strategy was also to respond to the problems we have around financing and so on. The study that Jerry Harris referred to that said we needed to have 119 or 120 extension officers, it's over 10-year-old study. And clearly, given where we are, there's just no way that this department will be able to appoint an additional 60 extension officers. You'd also know that nationally we're talking about COE ceiling, and now is not even the time to be talking about the extent to which we can bring about new extension officers to our employ. And therefore, we've got to work together with like-minded people, commodity organizations, Farmers Agri-SA, Farmers Association like AFASA, because themselves have experience in farming and themselves can actually provide the much needed support. So we've got to look at what other people call OPM, using other people's money to do our work, because that's really the reality we find ourselves in. Information per region around the farmer supported, yes, definitely we'll be able to supply that to you. The outreach programs, the question around that, I want to leave that to the DDG. Have we met our targets? Yes, I think in terms of the annual report, which will serve before this committee, probably within the next 2 or 3 months, we are over 90% in terms of the targets we needed to meet for the year 2020-21. But I must also say that this program that you are engaging with, Program 3, APSD, has met almost all its target. And we are very comfortable that in the year of COVID, when everybody was running for cover and we've been declared an essential services sector, we've done everything we needed to do. And as the accounting officer, I feel very comfortable that 90% achievement in a difficult year such as the one we had, I think the team has done, we have done really outdone ourselves. The monitoring system, yes, we do. When we visit these farms on monthly basis, we monitor the progress they are making. But we are also concerned that in some instances, in fact, just last week, it was brought to my attention, Honorable Chair, that one farmer that we had supported was now putting the farm on the market. Just after we've put infrastructure, they are putting that farm on the market. But fortunately, our systems are such that if you choose to sell your land, which is your right as a landowner, we need to annex the infrastructure that we had given to you. So within our systems, we are able to recall that taxpayers' investment to ensure that it does not go to where it shouldn't be. So it's a challenge that we also have farmers who want to do things like that in our system. Honorable Maran, your question very apt, and I want to leave that to the DDG, the 16 farmers, and I'm sure that list can be provided of those that we're not supporting financially anymore, and 34 that we are still supporting here and there. But I must also say upfront that for some of these farmers, it suits them not to be called commercial because they want to continue benefiting from the conditional grant. But from where we are seated, we are saying we're not going to have this funding forever. In fact, you would all know that the fiscus are really constrained in our country. So it's in our interest, all of us, that farmers are able to stand on their own. You referred to what the Premier had said in 2019. I definitely will not say what the Premier had said was wrong or is wrong, because I do think what the Premier had said is basically what we are saying today, in the sense that, and I think the one distinction one need to make is that we don't give land. We are the Department of Agriculture in the Western Cape, and the department that gives land is Agriculture, Land Reform, and Rural Development. And once land is given to these farmers with the right lease agreements, we then come in and support. But we must also underscore the fact that there will never be enough resources to support all land reform farmers in our province. But we've done 2 studies in the last 10 years, and those studies have indicated a positive trajectory around the success rate of land reform farmers. But I would leave the rest of the details to the DDG if he wants to come to that. Honorable Member America, 50 commercial farmers, you hit the nail on the head. Security of tenure, or that security of tenure in terms of land holding is really a key issue. That even where farmers are able to stand on their own, they are not able to access a good credit on a long-term period in the manner that commercial farmers have been able to grow their businesses. So that is really a challenge. You really have nailed it on the head. And these are the challenges that we continue to engage with our national counterpart, also understanding the risk of giving farmers land outrightly so, because they can sell it. But we think there could be ways around which farmers are not given land and their hands are tied behind their back to the extent that they can't move unless government comes in. So these are the things that we are grappling with. The 10 million rands for the graduate, I would leave that to the DDG. The cash flow management, we have referred to in this presentation to the financial record keeping and the production record keeping. That is really a system we put in place to assist farmers to be able to manage their finances correctly. But you can only be able to do the FRK, which is financial record keeping, if you understand the production records correctly. So that is really what we do to encourage them to be able to do that. But also with these two systems, they also build credentials that allows them to go to the banks and ask for support where required. But of course, the issue of security of tenure comes in all the time there. The statutory issues, the labor laws, the tax regime of the land, and so on. Our land reform study indicated that this was the area that there are still gaps in terms of compliance, particularly by the farmers we support. And we provide support through the unit for technical assistance, because ourselves are not experts in that area, but we provide that support through the unit for technical assistance. I'll leave the issue around the impact of national minimum wage on the smallholder farmers compliance issues to Mr. Jacobs to look at. Honorable Mare, your question around how do we define these farmers and so that we can provide training and support. I'll leave that also to my colleague, the DDG and his team. Chair, I want to pause there, and I'll come in if there are other questions that may have not been adequately answered by the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. If I can, you'll allow me, Chair, to continue to respond to some of the questions. And
please proceed.
I think if you'll allow me just to deal with your question on brandvlei, and if can I give you, or can I put you at ease and the members at ease? I think what we have seen, so while there's been little progress on brandvlei Dam itself, what there has been is the tender in relation to Kwaggaskloof, which is one of the feeder infrastructure to the brandvlei Dam, that has been advertised with the intention of construction happening in 22-23 financial year. So for us, that shows some progress, and obviously we're hoping that it will kickstart the bigger work that needs to happen on the brandvlei Dam, but at least Kwaggaskloof is some positive movement where there hasn't been any, as the members would know. So that's really the sum total of ease I can give you, Chair. Some work that has happened, some visible commitment from the Department of Water and Sanitation, and with the tender having gone out. In terms of Member Brinkhuis's question, and it ties in as well with Member Botha's question, in terms of outreach programs and educational programs, well, it's not directly linked, but I think what, COVID unfortunately derailed a lot of the work we were doing in terms of outreach programs, because up till that point in time, we were having regular information days, we were having regular career days. We had established a program called Connect Agri, which was about connecting agriculture and the formalizing of our programs, connecting that with both the broader agricultural sector, with smallholder farmers, subsistence farmers, with school learners, and then of course COVID hit, and we had to rethink our entire approach. So the information days, career days, and Connect Agri, a lot of it has had to take a back seat. Even when there are engagements, it happens on a much smaller basis. A lot of it is virtual at this point, and so outreach, especially in terms of marketing the agricultural college, happens virtually. We've got video links that potential learners in schools can connect with. We had a very successful outreach program recently within the Maritzburg area. A large part of it was virtual, but it was a sort of blended approach between virtual and physical presence, where learners in the Karoo could come and see and identify what the opportunities are within agriculture, and particularly within the agricultural college. So that is something that has certainly happened, but we've had to rethink our entire approach, and certainly I think the blended approach will continue for quite some time as the risk in relation to COVID continues. Member Botia, that's a very similar kind of outreach programs. We would have a number of farmer days and farmer information days, especially in the rural areas where we've got a solid footprint. Even there, we've had to take a backseat and just change our strategy, change our approach. But we have been able to continue some elements of it, but again, in a very blended way. Because we do know connectivity is sometimes a challenge, and so we can't simply have a virtual outreach program. We have to physically go to some of the areas and have that kind of connection with smallholder farmers. But I want to also ask Mr. Aris to pick up on this particular question, because while he was acting chief director, he was one of those that would make sure that we maintained our footprint within the community, especially within the rural areas, and that our extension officers and at the management level, that we continued with our programs as far as what it was within the mandate or adhering to all of the COVID protocols. Member Maran, the questions, I know the HOD has already responded to some of them, and certainly, I mean, the details on all of the farmers, all 50 farmers, those on the 16 farmers, and the implications, those who have graduated from the commercialization program, will they no longer qualify for COSP? And we are really trying to encourage people who have graduated from our various programs to not lean on COSP as almost as a way, and the HOD is correct. Some of the farmers prefer to not move into the commercialization space so that they can continue to access grants. And I think, it's just one of those aspects that we keep emphasizing. Once you graduate, you can basically stand on your own 2 feet. You don't need a government grant to sustain your operation, and that to make sure that the grants are provided for those who need a little bit of support to sustain their particular operations. In terms of what the Premier said, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not going to say that the Premier was incorrect, but I can say there have been 1 or 2 major projects that the department was not part of at the outset that have not been very successful. One of those was Solom's Delta, and in fact, I don't even think we were invited to the launch. And I know there's a lot of pressure at present with regards to Solom's Delta, and I think that was. It doesn't mean that if it's national, it will fail, but I think what we do want to encourage throughout is that there be a very close liaison between the national department and our department in terms of ensuring post-settlement support. And that's exactly why we've insisted wherever there's a large land reform intervention, that there's a clear plan of action which follows it, the post-settlement plan. If in the absence of a post-settlement plan, we would argue that it does not place any responsibilities or does not vest it anywhere, and we end up with enormous challenges. In terms of the question, Member America, around the statutory requirements. Now, our department would not ordinarily engage smallholder farmers around the statutory requirements, but what we do have is a very strong partnership with the Department of Labour and the Chief Inspector of the Department of Labour. And so where we identify there are challenges around lack of understanding of the statutory requirements, we would immediately call on our counterparts at the Department of Labour to go into the farm to assist the farmers and to ensure that there is compliance with all of the statutory requirements. So our Rural Development Program, Program 8 in this department, actually has a very close working partnership with the Department of Labour, and where we do want to ensure that every smallholder farmer who has to meet certain statutory requirements is enabled to be able to do that. In terms of the graduate internship program, as to the uptake and who are these graduates, it's certainly not only restricted to Western Cape applicants, but I think what is important is to understand it's a national program, and so every province has a certain allocation of graduates, and so there's no need for somebody from the province of Limpopo, as an example, or province of Mpumalanga, to seek employment on the graduate internship program in the Western Cape, because there is a similar, exactly the same program offered within those all of the other provinces. So we have the list of names of all of these graduates, and it's not only for Elsenburg graduates. Any higher education institution graduate, which includes Elsenburg, can qualify, can apply, and once they've gone through the screening process, and we're within the 120, we will be able to employ them as part of the graduate internship program. But Mr. Aris can also speak a little bit more on that. And then in terms of Member Murray, how we identify would-be farmers and training, and so we do have, in terms of our extension officers, when they go out, there's one of the reasons why our officers are spatially and geographically as diverse as possible is to make sure that it's within reach of every would-be farmer within this province. And so our services are accessible. We would receive a number of inquiries from would-be farmers, who will then be linked to our own internal training program that we provide, and so there's that level of interface between our extension officers, would-be farmers, and then in terms of the third part of your question, or your third question, how many are colored or black, or African, that detail we can certainly provide, but we and the HD has spoken to it. We don't give anybody farms, and so if there are empowered persons who receive farms over persons who may be better qualified, or we're not part of that, all we want to ensure is that there's a clear post-settlement plan when any land reform beneficiary receives a farm, and that this department is part of the development of that post-settlement plan to make sure that we are able to enable successful farmers at the end of the day. I want to ask Jerry Aris just to come in to pick up on one or two issues that I may have skirted over. But thank you very much, Chair and members, for your questions.
Thank you, DDG. Just in short, Chairperson, I think the DDG has asked me just to say something about the graduate interns. Yes, the total is 120. I think, yes, we are giving preference to our students. I say our students, the ones from Elsenburg, CPUT, Stellenbosch, and if there's at UWC or UCT, obviously from the Cape universities first. The scary part, I would say, for lack of better English, is that we don't have enough applications from the province, but obviously we are giving first preference to our own students in the province. Chair, I am not going to. I think there's enough been said about the 50 farmers. Just to say that I hear Mr. Maran was using the word some of them falls out or fall out. Although they are not getting maybe financial support because they can apply on a yearly basis for support, but obviously they must at least indicate what they are going to do with the funding. If they have received funding already for past 5 years, then they can apply, but it's not without saying, I mean, they are still getting been invited to conferences, farmers' days, information days. We are still giving them extension and training and. But some of them are also now at a point where they can qualify, and I hope that system is going to work very soon for the blended finance scheme. And some of them got strategic partners as well. It's not only that they're looking at government for support, they can get the support from somewhere else, or they're getting support from somewhere else as well. Chair, the last one, I think the DDG has asked me to say something about our extension footprint, and I think he's just alluded to it in his last comments that we are across the province, and we've got about, I think, 44 offices, and most of them are in B municipalities. So we are trying to get as close as possible to our farmers, and then we are also using, especially now during lockdown 5 and 4 levels, we were actually forced to do things the other way around and out of the box, and we were actually also engaging farmers virtually in terms of training, or they could get us then virtually to talk to us. Yes, I think those, Daryl, more or less, I think the things that I was supposed to comment on. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you, Mr. Aris, and before you also, Mr. Jacobs and Dr. Sebupetsa. I, again, honourable members, are going to allow for a brief round of questions for those that feel that their first questions have eluded further ones, or whose list of questions may have been a little bit too long. But again, as I can I just reiterate, if we could be brief and to the point and very clear in our questions to the officials. I already recognize the hand of Honourable Marais and then Honourable Maran.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm very interested in coming back, piggybacking on the replies received, because they were not very impressive. Let me tell you something. You say that security of tender is a key issue. That lends the question, if this is reformation or reform, why don't government put up the security? Why is security of tender an issue when it comes to getting long-term credit from banks? You say it's a challenge. Are you leaving these farmers on their own? You know, the national government look better after white farmers in this respect than what we are looking after coloured and black farmers. Why? It's supposed to be better now that it's a black government. Why don't they get loan? Why isn't there security? Question number 2. You say that you only give a little bit of support. I'm quoting Mr. Daryl Jacobs. The grants are intended to give only a little bit of support. No wonder there's going to be a little bit of success. And the man then wants to sell his farm because he sees it's not economically viable. And then post-settlement support. You say you end up with enormous challenges, but you do not tell us what are these enormous challenges you have to put up. Lastly, is it only graduates from colleges which can apply to be supported in wanting to farm? A lot of generational farmers learn farming from their fathers and their grandfathers. They didn't go to college, but they know about farming. Will they be considered? Who must they approach? Can you, before you leave here, give us the officials' names and the forms to be filled in if would-be farmers want to be farmers? They mightn't have been at your college because they are already over 30. So they wouldn't be at Elsenburg College. And the people coming from Elsenburg College are youngsters. Are you consider them to have more experience than people that's in their 40s? Who's not going to go to Elsenburg? What about them? Must they just fall off the cliff?
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Marais. Honourable Maran.
Thanks. Speaking about tenure of security in the 30-year lease that these plus farmers are currently receiving from the Rural Development Department, maybe, Chair, we should get a report in terms of land that's been bought through IALRED. Also, Chair, get a report land that's been bought for individuals or group for the equity scheme. Because, Chair, that particular report will tell you that land that has been bought and in the name of those farmers has been sold back to the previous owners. Maybe we should get a report before we speak about the 30-year lease, Chair, and the security of tenure of those particular farmers. Because there's a history and we know what have happened to those particular lands. That's the one. Chair, the 30-year lease and the request by Andre Kluter saying that he is in a position basically to buy the land back from the department. I think what we should do, Chair, is to see these 16 farms and whether some of those, I believe, are plus farms, and whether there are other individuals that are in a position basically to board back, or whether their attitude is that it should be given to them. And this particular program have basically showed that they can farm and they are successful. How then we will assist them to make sure. I have seen basically the tracking document that also speaks basically to Andre Kluter's farms, and the letter or email that was sent and no response that came back. How then we can support those farmers to make sure that it's registered in their names. Chair, the response by Dr. Mogale and what the Premier have said, Chair, we know, and we have spoken about that many times, is that the responsibility of land reform lies with national government. But the moment that the national government have bought a farm or land for agriculture, and there's a post-settlement plan, then we know the Department of Agriculture came in, and their responsibility is support. I'm speaking about that support, Chair. I'm speaking about that support. And that's the comparison that's been drawn by the Premier, saying that our agricultural programs through our commodity system is more successful than those of national government. I would understand if the department is saying that we don't have all the money to support all the farmers, but even those that have failed belongs to us because it's in the province, their own land. They have settled on that particular land. They have just failed because of one, inexperience, two, there was not the financial support for those particular farmers. Then lastly, Chair, Amalienstein and Vaikra, if we speak about the 30-year lease and the program with strategic partners or whether it's mentors to make sure that farmers are successful, what's the difference between that particular program and Amalienstein? Because for the last 10, 15 years, this department could not manage to hand over those farms as promised to the communities. So we're speaking about one that aligned to national government, but when it comes to our own, which is more or less the same, we doesn't speak about that. What's the difference between a Malienstein and Wijkraal? Thanks.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Maran. And before I hand over to Dr. Sebupetsa, I think the viability of a farm is also extremely important. And I think the province wouldn't like to hand over farms that are struggling to people that are actually themselves in need of support. But perhaps Dr. Sebupetsa can expand on that. I think the other important thing for me, which I would like to hear a little bit more, is the selection of beneficiaries of these schemes. As a former educator, I must tell you it's extremely important to select or screen those that enroll for particular training programs to make sure that they have got the interest and that they have the necessary potential. Can I just lastly, Dr. Sebupetsa, one of the first slides indicated the massive decrease in employment in primary agriculture. Now, in this time where we know how high unemployment is, and while we're grateful for the long-term trend in terms of the growth of agriculture and the contribution of agriculture to employment, that one figure was really a disturbing one. And perhaps if you could just tell us, is there a possibility of that trend to be turned around at the short notice, particularly with all the prospects of a good harvest season? What are the factors that you believe resulted in that incredible decrease in employment, and how would we be able to turn that around again? And with that, over to you, Dr. Sebupetsa, again, for you to deal with some of the questions yourselves and to pass some on to your staff. Thank you.
Chair, again, thank you very much to you and the members for the questions. Let me start with your last one. I think that the decrease or the reduced number of employment created in the primary agriculture, it's one that is a concern for us, but one that we somewhat believe is not properly recorded. You'd know, Chair, that since the COVID arrived, what had happened is that Stats SA has adopted a different approach to the labor force survey. They used what they call an automatic or assisted approach to gain access to farms, and using cell phone technology and so on. We think that is probably one reason why the numbers look the way they look. That's probably the first one. The second one would relate to, in our view, to the impact of the lockdown on some sectors of the economy, particularly in the agri space. The wine industry is one of those that had suffered greatly in the last 18 months. Thirdly, it could also be that the sector has just emerged from the 8-year-long drought season. And I must also indicate that in areas such as the Beaufort West and up in Vredendal, farmers are still affected in a big way. But in terms of the state's way of assessing, we have raised that with the Director General at the National Agriculture, because we believe we need to find each other with Stats SA. Because the number of jobs that we were told that the primary sector is shedding, and you juxtapose that with the bumper crop that was the best in 2020 and estimated to be the same in 2021, the two does not gel. So together with Bureau for Agriculture Policy at the University of Pretoria, who is a very good partner of the Western Cape Agriculture, we're engaging National Agriculture and Stats SA to find each other around that, because the one thing we cannot afford is for this sector to be misrepresented around that. But that is a matter that economists will be attending to. And you are correct on the selection of farmers, that if you get the wrong people to the farm or the wrong people to any program, you run the risk of collapsing that program. And that is why we continue to support the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development as and when we are called upon to advise. But in the end, the decision as to who must get land, Chairperson, doesn't rest with us. And I must say that is not always where our advice is taken. But in the end, the law really ours is to advise, and the decision around where the land goes is not our decision. You'd know about the story of Ivan Klute. Ivan Klute in the Swartland region that has moved to his third farm now. And we appreciate the fact that he's now settled where he is. But Ivan Klute has been moving between farms since 2014. And that is against the advice that ourselves, together with AFASA in the province that we work with closely, were given to national government around that. But we're happy that Ivan is finally settled. Amalian Stein and Vikral, you are correct, Chairperson, that we have always lamented the fact that those farms in their current state are not viable farms. And if they were to be transferred to the communities, government will be transferring a non-functional farm to this community, and obviously that farm will fail. We have reported to this committee in terms of what you have asked us to look at, and I'm sure at some point we'll have the opportunity to share with you what the turnaround is saying to us and what support we need from this committee going forward, because the substantial investment that is required. There is no farm that can be run successfully if there is no water. And this seems to be key issues relating to the farms that Honorable Meran referred to. We think that our land reform program or support to land reform program in the Western Cape, we think is successful, given the external evaluation that had come to us and told us what performance there was. We are very comfortable about the scientific methodology that was followed to arrive at that decision. It is not something we set at Elsenbeck and decide this is the rating. So we're comfortable around that, and we think the model and the approach that we have works, and that is why the rest of the country, by the way, had been engaging us on wanting to start a similar approach in the rest of the country, to work together with the industry to ensure that we create one agriculture, because that is really what will benefit this country, that we create one agriculture where farmers work together and benefit together in terms of the support that there is, either within government or within commodities, because there's a lot of resources and assets that the commodity formations are bringing to the table. Honorable Maran, I agree with you fully on the fact that the committee would probably need to support farmers like Andre Klute and many other Andre Klutes that are in this province. People that are saying, we have proved to ourselves, give us a title deed to these farms, or give us the price so that we can buy these farms, because farming is a business and every business person would want security in some way or the other. Predictability is what is needed when you run a business. A guy like Andre Klute has proven himself over the years, and why can't we enable him to be able to run the business the way he sees it? I also note your point around perhaps getting a report on the plus farms, the land, LRAD farms, and the equity scheme farms, and those, whatever we have, we will definitely provide. But I must hasten to say that a comprehensive list of all those programs may not sit with us. It's a list that would sit with the Provincial Shared Services Center, which is a satellite office of the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. We can provide what we have, but we know that we may not have the full list because everything is coordinated by that department. Honorable Mare, your question number 3 on the postgraduate or the graduate graduate support. I must indicate that that is really a youth development program, if you like, to give these young people experience, work or farm experience, so that they can begin to look for what to do elsewhere. This is not used as a guarantee that now that you've gone through this graduate program, you can gain access to land. Of course, that decision doesn't lie with us, but as we understand this program, that's really not the objective of it. It's really to bring young people out there who are unemployed, give them experience on farms, also at the department, so that they can gain that experience. And if they choose to go into farming and they've got access to land, so be it. If they choose to go into extension and they've got opportunities, now that they've got experience, they can apply to become extension officers. A little bit of support, and that is why we've got a little bit of success. The truth of the matter is that we only have, for instance, in this financial year, 116 million of CASP. The applications that we received is close to R1 billion. So we will never at any given time have enough support for all the farmers. And that is why we encourage farmers to also look at other ways of raising finance to be able to run their businesses. And what we've done towards that, we've brought in the banking sector into our approving committee, into our structures, so that themselves begin to see opportunities where they are and assist the farmers where they can. The truth of the matter is we are totally not going to be able to support all farmers. If you look at 110 million rands versus R1 billion worth of wish list from the farming sector, there's just no way that we'll be able to deal with that. The security of tenure, again, it's an issue that, and I think Honorable Marian referred to it, it's an issue that, in our view, it's the land belongs to government. Farmers are on a 30-year lease, leasing the land from the state. But because that land does not belong to them as business owners, they can use that land to obtain credit financing. And that's really the point we are lamenting. We understand the issues that happened with LRAD, where farmers sold the land, but we think there could be some mechanism around which farmers, particularly those who are beginning to prove themselves, that they be given a space to own this land so they can further invest out of their own credit financing that they would be able to access. I'm not sure if there's anything I missed, in which case my DDG can just come in just to conclude on the questions raised. Over to DDG.
Thank you very much. You've been very comprehensive, but Member Marais did want a name before we left this platform. And I think, Member Marais, if there are potential farmers that interact with you, please feel free to direct them to Mr. Aris. But we have a number of other training interventions and support that we provide to potential farmers. We've got, in terms of development opportunities, there are learnerships, there are short courses, all of which are aimed at strengthening our farmers and our potential farmers. So please feel free to make use of that opportunity. Otherwise, you have responded fully, even to Member Maria's quotation of myself. Thank you very much. That's all.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you to the honourable members, also to the officials for responding so comprehensively to our questions and adding to our knowledge. And I think I speak on behalf of the committee if I say thank you very much for serving us with all this information. I believe some of this might be taken up in some resolutions hereafter. Before we allow you to leave this meeting, Dr. Sebopetsa, are there any final departing words that you would like to share with us?
Chair, thank you very much. Nothing except to thank you and the members for always giving us the opportunity to account. This is, although it was on short notice, we always value your time, and we always are ready to come to account for the work that is happening in the Western Cape. And we appreciate the continued support because you're also playing your part in supporting the work we do. And for that, we are very grateful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Doctor. And I think I can speak on behalf of the committee if I wish you and your officials well in your work. I think Honourable Kamba Botja has highlighted that the fact that you are understaffed, that funds are limited, and therefore, I believe that is where good management makes the difference. And we wish you well. Thank you very much. Honourable members, if I could ask you if it would be in order for you if we take just a 5-minute leg stretch. And on my laptop, it's now 11:15, almost 11:16. If we could be back by 11:21, we still have a number of minutes, reports, etc. to serve before us. So please don't leave this meeting. Those of you that are full-time members or alternate to this committee, please remain on the line, and we'll see each other in 5 minutes' time. Thank you. This brings us to the agenda item resolutions, and I'm open for proposals from you as members for resolutions flowing from what we've learned this morning. Thank you, Honourable Marais. I recognise you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I want to propose a resolution that this committee recommends to the Minister that a greater emphasis should be placed on a process of recruiting and empowering new farmers from the age groups 35 years and older who wish to become full-time farmers, and that restrictions be placed on title deeds given to them on the sale of such land for a period of no less than 15 years. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. I presume, Honourable Marais, that this is in the case where farms are indeed transferred to those beneficiaries. You know that the current policy or from government is that those farmers are only given a 30-year lease for their farms. So if we could just qualify that.
Yes, I know they're giving a 30-year lease, but the legislature has the power to influence the amendment of such laws. We've heard that they've been trying the present way of doing things, and they have minimal chances of success because banks don't want to give them loans because the title deeds are held by the state. There's very little money and they get small little bits of money, and that the students that they consider to be would-be farmers just come from school. They don't even know themselves what they want to be one day. People 30 years, 35, 40 and over, they know exactly if they want to go into farming. So I'm not saying we must hook our train onto national train. I'm saying we've got to come with our own new ideas. I think that we have got to put a resolution to start a thinking process away from an ideological viewpoint.
Thank you, Honourable Marais. If you say the minister, sorry, I'm not clear who you're addressing. Is it the national minister or provincial minister?
Provincial minister.
Okay, good. No, thank you. Is there support for that proposal by Honourable Marais?
Chair?
Honourable Maran?
I'm not clear in what the Honourable Marais is asking. Because you speak about the process, and the current process basically is to put your name on the databases, and if a farm becomes available, there's a district land committee basically which comprised out of your agricultural organizations like Western Cape, AFASA. They sit on that panel. There's someone from the LED, from the municipality within where the land basically is situated. So there is a committee basically that went through that shortlist those who are on the database, interview them, and they make a recommendation to the minister. That's the process that's currently there. Because the Honourable Marais has spoken about the process basically that people from the age of 35 and older that should be recruited. I'm just saying what the current process is. I'm not sure whether we want to propose something different now, if I understand the Honourable Marais correctly.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Honourable Marang, for posing that question. We must see agriculture as a business. It's a business. And we are still seeing the agriculture in a different light. It's some sort of social policy of government. We're going to move away from it. Who is business-minded enough to want to start farming, want to have a farm of his own? And I think we must have a mind shift on this issue. I know what the processes are now, I'm forward thinking and saying, gee, what can we do to do this better? There's a lot of people of the black, be it colored, be it Indian, being African community, who would like to go into farming. He might not be the most educated guy, but damn it all, he knows about farming. And I'm just saying, should we have a campaign, Honorable Marang, where people are made aware that you, Yanni of Henny, wat daar bly in Tilbag of in Namakwaland, jy het ook 'n kans om 'n aanmerking te kom vir hierdie. Dit is nie net vir die geleerde mense wat nou gaan aansoek doen nie. Ek dink ons moet regtig probeer om die net weier te gooi, Honorable Marang. Sorry, I'm switching to my mother tongue. I think we should throw the net wider. There's a lot of black people, there's a lot of people of other race groups that's previously disadvantaged who would like to farm. But they don't know what process to follow.
Honorable Murray, sorry, can I just thank you very much. I'm just concerned that we might be entering into a debate now. Can I just ask Honorable Nkamba Botja, would you like to amend this proposal, or are you on a different point that you've raised your hand?
No, Chairperson, I wanted to raise some few recommendations.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so can we first just perhaps deal with this one? Honorable America, I see your hand as well. Do you have an amendment that you would like to propose to perhaps let us find some middle ground?
Yeah, correct, Chair. I do have an amendment. I think perhaps we could ask the department to provide us with the criteria that they take into account when considering applicants for this particular program.
Good, thank you. Is there support wider than just myself for that proposal, that we perhaps just start first with the criteria for the selection process, and then we can perhaps, once we've got that, can we say the criteria as well as the who is influencing that decision? Because I did hear that the provincial officials said they're not part of that process. So we could hear the criteria first, and secondly, who takes that decision on who should be beneficiaries. I think that is important information. Are you happy if we go with that resolution?
I would support the Chair. I would support Mr. America's amendment.
Good, thank you very much. Can we move on to a second resolution then, Honorable Nkamba Botja?
Chair, thank you very much. Chair, correct me, I'm not sure if the beefing up of the officials, as it was mentioned by the presenter, if it's a competence of national or provincial government. Then if it's national, can then the committee assist in writing a letter to national inquiring on this matter, because this thing is speaking directly on the programs that should take place, which are not taking place because of the resources, because the presenters have made mention that they are unable to reach out in all farmers or emerging farmers because of the fact that they have a shortage. So can we as a committee write a letter making an inquiry or request if there is a possibility of this matter being dealt with? And secondly, I would also...
Sorry, can we take it one at a time? Honorable Nkamba Botja. Honorable Nkamba Botja, my impression is that these officials...
Chair,
yeah?
Chair, can you hear me? Okay, can I proceed or you want...
No. I would like us to deal with the resolutions one by one. Your first proposal is that we write to national to inquire regarding the number of officials. Do I understand you correctly?
That is correct, Chairperson.
Yes. Honorable Nkamba Botja, it is my impression, but perhaps I stand to be corrected, that within the provincial budget, the priorities are determined at provincial level. And that's not the national government that prescribes that ratio of what they call, is it expansion officers? So perhaps, we must direct such queries rather to our provincial cabinet or to the Premier, Minister of Finance. Do you understand my concern? It's not the national minister.
Yeah. No, I'm fine, Chairperson. That's why I first said that I'm not sure if it's a competence of national or the provincial government. Then if it means it stands with the provincial government, then we should then direct a letter to the Minister of Finance, who will then be able to assist us in this regard.
Good, thank you. So your proposal is a letter to the Minister of Finance to inquire regarding the high ratio of extension officers versus the number of farmers that need to be assisted. Is that a correct summary?
That is correct, Chair. That's correct, Chair.
Thank you. And your second proposed resolution? On Kamba Botja, I was under the impression that you've got a second one that you wanted to present to us. Unfortunately, we don't hear you at the moment. Okay, we can come back to Honourable Kamba Botja. Then the next one is then Honourable Maram. Any resolutions from your side, or was that just a hand when you wanted to respond to Honourable Marais?
No, it's a first hand.
Good, please proceed.
Chair, I just want to propose, as I've said earlier on, that the department should provide us with a list of the 50 participants. Also, the 16 that have gone successfully through that particular program, Chair, and also those 16, Chair, whether it's plus farms or whether it's privately owned. Just that distinction, Chair. That would be one of my resolutions.
Good, thank you. Is that generally accepted? No comment? Approved? Then Honourable Brinkhuis, I recognise your hand. You've been raising that for a while.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, in terms of resolution, I would propose if we can have a full day, a full workshop, if the department can help us with a full day's workshop regarding the conditions by which those grants are given to the beneficiaries. Yes, if we can be helped by the department with a full day workshop, and if we can have more detail on the criteria for the beneficiaries getting those grants. Thank you, Chair.
Good. Honourable Brinkhuis. Honourable Brinkhuis, I recognise the hand of Honourable America.
No, Chair, I think perhaps that you wanted to respond to that proposed resolution. My view is that I don't think the information required merits and warrants a full day's workshop. We can simply just ask the department for a report to provide us with that information.
Thank you.
I would second that proposal, that counter proposal. Yes, we can just ask for a report.
Good, thank you, Honourable Brinkhuis. It then seems to me, perhaps once we've received that information in a report, if you then still, would like to engage with the officials as a committee for as you say, a full day workshop, would you be happy for us to proceed just first by asking for that information in a report?
In order, Chair, in order.
All right, Dankie. Thank you so much. Welcome back, Honourable Kamba Botja. You had a second resolution, and then I think your line may have been cut.
failed me. Yeah, Chairperson, thank you very much, and my apologies for that. I just had two more. The first one was a request to have a list of beneficiaries on grants and the support programs that per region that the department has given out to these people. And lastly, if we can also get a list of all the outreach programs that the department has embarked on during the financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you. Honourable Maran, I see your hand. Can we just first discuss this proposed resolution? And then Honourable Marais. First Maran, then Marais.
Chair, Chair, also based on the information that we have received from the department, I know that we have tried before. Maybe we should ask again the minister or deputy minister or the department, national department, invite them again to to appear in front of us, or invite them to the standing committee. Maybe that should be one of the resolutions. I think it's important, Chair, that we get them.
Honourable Maran, if can I, sorry, I'm not clear. Who would you like to invite?
The National Department.
The National Department.
Yes, the National Department, because I know there was an attempt and all of them were not available. But in terms of the information that we have received now, especially the 16 and the 30 years basically that will not serve as collateral or security, I think it's important then that we invite the National Department just to have a discussion around the issue of farmers that are willing to buy back those farms. Maybe we should invite them. Try again as last time. Thanks.
Okay, can I just say, I just don't want us to move too far away from Honourable Nkamba Botja's proposal. Can we first consider Honourable Nkamba Botja's proposal that who said that she would like to have a list of all the outreach programs, shall we say within the last financial year? Generally accepted?
I will support that one, Chair, within the last financial year, if she agrees.
Thank you. And Honourable America, I see your
microphone. I agree with that, Chair. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very mumuch. Can we just, Honourable Nkamba, sorry, and then Honourable Maran, you said that we invite the National Department to a future meeting of this committee to also, from their side, inform us regarding the beneficiaries and the support that they're giving, their expectations of what the Western Cape must do with the money that's being allocated to us. Is that a fair reflection of what your proposal was, Honourable Maran?
Not necessarily, Chair, the funding that we are receiving from them and what we should do with it. My concern is the 16 farmers that are basically off that particular program now, qualified as commercial farmers. But it is also said that when it comes to those who are on plus farms, the bank are not interested in the 30-year lease that they are currently held with the department. And whether with that information and them successful, how the department then can assist to make sure that we hand over those farms to them or we are selling it back to them, Chair. But we know when it comes to the 34, the support in terms of CASP and Ilemala Sema, that will still be there. But just in terms of the 16, they will not get support, financial support from the department anymore. That's my understanding, Chair.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much. I think Ms. Nikak must have captured that. Can we just go back to Honourable Nkamba Botja? She indicated that she's got another proposed resolution. Honourable Nkamba Botja? Oh, I think we may have lost her again. Then
no, Chairperson, I've tabled all my recommendations or requests. It's 3 of them. Okay. The list of the beneficiaries, the list of the programs, and lastly the letter to the minister. Those are the 3 things that I've raised.
Good, excellent. Thank you. We're making good progress. And then I also recognize
is there nothing from the Honourable Marais about bees? The bees?
No. Can we, Honourable Marais? Your hand is raised.
Thank you very much. Sir, I noticed one thing. We don't have money. We don't visit all the farms. They said so. They can't visit all the farms. They say they have very little money. And they tell these emerging farmers, you must make contact with the commercial farmers. They say they encourage them. Sir, they can't speak at that level, emerging farmers with commercial farmers. I know some of these commercial farmers, they're stinking rich. They don't talk penny talks. Why can't this committee ask the commercial farmers if they will be prepared to meet with this committee? And on the agenda is, how can they assist unsuccessful farmers whom we are trying to help and encourage to farm economically? And are they prepared to ABBA? You know, ABBA is a word used in my community when a child can't walk, then you tie him on your back with a Charlie. And wherever the mother goes there, this child goes and the child learns that way because he can't walk yet. I want them to ABBA colored and black farmers until they are strong enough to walk. Can we set up a meeting, this committee, to meet, even if the minister wants to accompany us, to meet with commercial farmers to say, how are you going to get on board to help these struggling farmers and make them viable? You have all the know-how, your knowledge. You even help each other. Even when there was drought, they gave enough water and feeding for the animals. It's time they give it to us too. I want to pass propose a resolution that possibility be investigated and that this committee prepare themselves to meet with the commercial farmers to discuss this proposal.
Good. Thank you, Honourable Marais. I think that is a great proposal, except that we obviously wouldn't be able to get to all the different sectors within the industry. But I think there are really some great stories where, and I must say, what touched me this morning, or what I noticed, was these the way in which the Western Cape Department of Agriculture works by bringing in what seems to me like sector representatives as partners within the support programs. Honourable America, I recognise your hand probably on this resolution as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't have an in-principle disagreement with the resolution, but as we all know, that there are thousands of commercial farmers, and often they organize within organized structures. And perhaps in terms of having a resolution that speaks to meeting commercial farmers, that we consider engaging with organized agriculture in the form of Western Cape Agri or whichever WinPro, those organized structures that represent commercial farmers, and then we will have a good sense in terms of what is happening out there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can I assume that you are happy with such a proposal?
Well, yes, this is what I actually meant, but I'm not as eloquent as my colleague. He encouched it in terms which should be acceptable to everybody.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you for the compliments that you give to one another on this meeting. The spirit is recognised and appreciated. Thank you. So, honourable members, those deal with the resolutions from this meeting, which now brings us to the minutes. And I'm going to ask Ms. Nika to first flight the minutes of the 15th of June on our screens for consideration.
Here we go, Chairperson.
Thank you, honourable members. You see the minutes there. Can I perhaps just say, as far, I see Honourable America was a member of that meeting as well, or was present,
Just the
as
two
well
of
as
us.
myself. So between myself, Honorable America, and Honorable Maseku and Maran, it seems to me we are the ones that would be able to confirm whether this is an accurate reflection of what we discussed or what happened that day in the meeting. Honorable Maran, I recognize your hand.
Chair, I don't see the thanks. I don't see the Honorable Maseko in the meeting. So it's only myself and the Honorable America. No, Chair, I've gone through it and I want to propose that we accept the minutes, approve the minutes.
A second, Chair.
I'm
Thank
not
you
sure.
very much.
I'm not sure we'll second the next set, the next two sets, because it's only myself and you, Chair.
Thank you. Interesting enough, while Ms. Nikak flights the 3rd of August, in terms of the rules of the Western Cape, we don't need a seconder. But if you would be so kind to confirm whether you're happy with the minutes, I will then also add my voice to that.
I'm happy, Chair.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Nikak. We've got a proposal and I will support that the minutes be adopted. And then the next one brings us also in August to the 10th of August. Honourable members, the 10th of August is there on the screen.
I saw the end of the Honourable Marais. I'm not sure whether he was present.
No, I think it is still what is called a legacy hand from when he took part in the discussions or when he made his proposed resolutions.
I'm happy with the minutes of 10 August, Chair.
Good, thank you. I will also support that and therefore those minutes are duly adopted. Thank you. Honourable members, that brings us to the report of an oversight visit to Elsenburg on the 8th of June. That was actually a hybrid meeting. And let me just see, I'm not sure if we would be able to adopt that one today. I don't, we can, because as I've said, we only need one vote, but I wonder, Ms. Nikak, if you wouldn't mind putting this back onto the agenda of our next meeting. So either the Honourable Bartman or Maseku would also be able to confirm. I've gone through that report. I'm happy, but I think it would just be better if somebody else could also endorse that. Good.
No problem, Chairperson. I'll put it on the agenda for next week then.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And the next one is our quarterly report for the first quarter of this financial year, April to June 2021. Good. There you can see it on the screen. Thank you, Mr. Nikak. It's also been circulated and uploaded onto the Teams folder. I think what the members would be interested in is particularly the attendance table. There you have got it.
Chair, could I just come in here? Could we do the same with this report as with the previous report? Because the members that are often affected here are not present in this meeting, so perhaps it would be wise to, put it on the next meeting's agenda.
Thank you. I'm happy. Let's just hear from Honourable Maran if he's
I just
happy
wanted
with.
to check. I just wanted to check with the Honourable America members affected who, how?
Now, I think Honourable Maran, that Honourable Bartman and Maseku don't seem to be on this meeting at present. And with the previous report, it was only myself who would be able to confirm. And then I said I would prefer that one to serve at our next meeting. In this one, at least, we've got 3 members online. It's myself, yourself, and Honourable Marais, who attended most of those meetings and would be able to confirm the accuracy of this report. So I think that the question is whether Honourable Marais and yourself is happy for us to adopt today, or whether you would like this one also to stand over.
Look, Cheng, I've gone through it, and between the three of us present, myself and the Honourable Marais have attended this meeting the most. So it's between the two of us, Chair, and when it comes to myself, Chair, the meetings that I've attended, as basically shown there, is correct. Chair, my only issue was only that the Standing Committee of Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Planning, remember last time, and also you got Cape Nature and then Casidra. We were arguing that it's basically more than one committee, although it's one committee, and that the amount of money that we are receiving for this committee, Chair, that I'm fearing, Chair, that the spending, Chair, is so slow that we only will be able to spend just more than 20,000 rand for the financial year, Chair. I'm not saying we must be reckless, but I'm just saying the spending is very, very slow. We must just go and visit another place and spend. Do I oversight visiting? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Moran. Before we go to into the detail, can I just ask first whether you're happy to support? It seems to me you're happy for us to adopt this today. And Honourable Marais, I take silence also as consent. So thank you very much. So this one is indeed then adopted. Just in terms of your fears regarding the expenditure, perhaps Ms. Niekerk can just say that our fears should actually be that we might overspend. Am I correct, Ms. Niekerk?
That is correct, Chairperson. On the screen now, members will see the allocation for the financial year of 68,000. And as at the 30th of June, the expenditure was 4,400. But in August, this committee incurred an additional expense of 33,000 Rand, which was for the advertisement for the biodiversity bill. So the balance that is available from now until 31st of March next year is about 33,000 Rand that the committee has available to spend for the rest of the financial year. However, when we get to the program later and the committee decides on items to include on its agenda going forward, and if those items incur expenses such as oversight visits, that would be sent through to our finance department, and adjustments with regard to the overall committee budget would then be made to accommodate the activities of this committee. That's me, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. So, Honourable Maran, yes, the advertisements are quite expensive, and we must just hold thumbs that we don't need to flight too many advertisements. It is something which I know the issue of the budget is being addressed internally. Thank you. The next document is our tracking document showing all the so-called open items. So, honourable members, I think that is more for us to take note of, but if you could just then confirm that you have noted and that you accept the tracking document again. And I think the one reason why we've got a tracking document is in order to ensure that all the items that we've raised in this committee is dealt with as far as our schedule allows. So if you are happy with that tracking document for us to adopt that as well, I'll be happy.
Chair.
Honourable Maran.
Yeah, Chair, I've noticed there's, I think, 3 or 4, which says waiting on the adoption of the minutes. I just want to check with you, Chair, in terms of the decisions that we have taken. The adoption of the minutes does not hold back the implementation of such a decision. I just want to get clarity in terms of that.
Again, Ms. Niekerk, would you like to allude?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Member Maran, why the departments are only notified, or why we request the information on adoption of the minutes, is that when those the draft minutes are put before the committee, there may be changes that the committee wants to make to those minutes. So once the minutes are considered and adopted, therefore ratified as correct, then we then send out the letters to the department requesting information or informing them of oversight visits, whatever the decision was. So we wait for ratification before we actually issue the letters to the departments or ministers. I hope that answers the question, Chair.
Yes, thank you. And I can also confirm that Ms. Nikak often informally already give the department a heads up of some information that's being required by the committee so that they can start preparing, because quite often the due date between the adoption of the minutes and the date set to them for us to receive that information is tight. So thank you very much. I presume then that the program is adopted, or the tracking document, sorry, is adopted. And that brings us to the program,
Chair,
which is more
just
for...
on what, Chair, just on what, before you proceed, on what Ms. van Niekerk have said, is that maybe the wording is that we cannot add anything except to make sure that the minutes are correct.
Correct.
Because I'm not sure whether I've heard correctly saying that maybe there is something that we want to add, but I think the only addition is basically will be the correctness of the minutes. If something basically, if we don't agree with what's, but it's fine. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Informally, the procedural officer will basically inform or tip them and say there is this thing. Thanks.
Yes, Honourable Maran, you're correct. Obviously, it cannot be added afterwards, but should anything have been omitted from the minutes, obviously, then we're able to add it, but we can't go and record what has not been said in the meeting. And then the next one is not for adoption.
Can I just ask permission to leave the meeting now, sir? For something urgent I need to attend to?
Yes, thank you, Honourable Marais. The next one is just for notification, and I think if you can give us 1 minute, and that is particularly for us to highlight this coming Friday's meeting. Ms. Nikak, perhaps you can just confirm whether the NCOP has indeed dealt with the Forest Amendment Bill and the environmental management laws. Are we going to have to meet on Friday, or is that still provisional?
Chairperson, at this stage, it is provisional. Just so that you and members know, I've sent out a link to the NCOP's meeting this afternoon. It's starting at 4:30, where they're going to wrap up their discussion on the negotiating mandates on the NEMLA bill. So the meeting is scheduled from 4:30 till 7:30 this evening. And thereafter, I'll have clarity as to whether this meeting will in fact take place on Friday coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Marais. You're excused. Thank you for your active participation in this meeting as well.
Thank you.
And I do realize that this is more to do with the environmental part, whereas you attend our agriculture meetings in this committee. So, honourable members, please note the program, the fact that we may have to have a quorum this coming Friday morning at 8 o'clock in order for us to be able to finalize our mandate on that. Okay, you've taken note of that. Thank you, honourable members. Are there any items on the program, on the general, that you would like us to deal with? None? Good, thank you, honourable members. Then it's right on 12 o'clock. I want to say thank you very much for your active participation. Thank you to Honourable America for standing in. You're most welcome always in this meeting, and thank you also for your contributions. And honourable members, with that, this meeting is adjourned, and I wish you all a wonderful, beautiful day going forward. Thank you.